Hello everybody, welcome to our next unit, which is algebra. So when we're looking at algebra, we are basically looking at combining numbers and letters all together. Okay, before we get started though, there are a few vocab words that we need to be able to go through before we can go through our example questions. So the word pronumeral or variable in algebra, we use letters, okay? And these letters are what we call the pronumerals or variables, and they're used to represent one or more number. So they are basically letters used to represent numbers. And we can use any letter. We could use an A, we could use an X, we could use a B, a C, whatever we want to. All right. Expression. The word expression is basically a combination of those numbers and letters. So combination of numbers and letters, and that's what we call an expression. So an example would be 3x. We've got a number and a letter with a plus sign, 2yz. Okay, that's an example of an expression. Another expression could be 8 divided by 3a plus 2. That's an example of an expression. So basically, when I've got numbers and letters combined all together with some mathematical symbols in between. Okay, a term is a part of an expression. So part of an expression. And when we're talking about parts of an expression, we are talking about each segment between the mathematical symbols. Okay, so for this expression over here, we've got 3x, which is a term. We've got 2yz, which is a term. We've got a 3a, which is a term. Some other examples could be 10cd, okay, where there's nothing really in between these. I know there's little time symbols, but in terms of looking at our expression, it's the parts of our expression, okay? A coefficient is the number in front of our pronumeral, the number in front of our letter. So we're going to write here number in front of letter. And I'm going to write pronumeral in brackets because that's what it actually is. Okay, so say I had the expression 3x plus y take away 7z. All right, we've got 3x as a term, we've got y as a term, and we've got 7z as a term. Okay, the coefficient are the numbers that come in front of each of these. So the coefficient of x is 3. The coefficient of y, because there's no number there, we imagine the number 1. Okay, so the number 1 is a coefficient of y, and in front of our z, we've got a -7. So the coefficient of this term is going to be -7. All right. Our constant term is basically a variable or a part of our expression that does not have a letter, okay? A term that does not contain, okay, variable not included. So it doesn't have a letter. So if I've got something like 5a plus 7b plus 3, 3 is going to be our constant term. All right. Now just some vocab words in terms of worded questions that we may come across. Okay, the word sum. Okay, so the word sum basically means plus. So the sum of A and B is going to be written as A plus B. Difference. Difference means minus. So the difference of A and B is going to be A minus B. Product. Okay, product means times. So the product of A and B is going to be A times B. And in algebra, okay, when we've got a time sign and we've got two variables or two pronumerals, we combine them together. Okay, so we pretend that there's an invisible sign, an invisible time sign between those two. Quotient. Okay, we've done plus, minus, times. You can imagine the last thing to do is divide. So the quotient of A and B, the way that we do that is A divided by B. And remembering in maths, division, we can write it as a fraction. So it's going to be A over B. All right. And square, the square of A is going to be A squared, like this. This is something that you are going to be using a lot of throughout our algebra unit. So you need to be aware of what each of these things mean. All right, so in our first exercise, what we're going to be looking at is this vocab and playing around and making sure we understand what this vocab is. So we'll go through an example. I have got the expression over here, 4a plus b minus 12c plus 5. That is an expression. We need to list the individual terms. Okay, so remember when we're listing the individual terms, we're looking at each part of our expression. So I have got a 4a, I have got a b, I have got a negative 12c, and I've got a 5. They are my 4 individual terms that are part of this expression. State the coefficients. Okay, so remember the coefficient is the number that comes before the letter. So the coefficient of A is 4. The coefficient of B, remember if there's no number in front of it, we're going to remember that it's a 1. The coefficient of C, we're going to include the negative as well, so it's going to be negative 12. All right, and my coefficient, there's no other letters, so we're going to leave it. Okay, that's a number on itself. Remember, if there's a number on itself, we call that the constant term. So what is the constant term? The constant term is 5. Okay, we've got another example here. 3a plus 4ab plus 5b squared plus 7b. Our question is, what is the coefficient of b? Coefficient, remember, is the number in front of b. Okay, so we've got two things that have a b in it. We've got this and we've got this. Because it's just asking me for the coefficient of b, we are looking at b on its own, not b squared, okay? So the coefficient of b, number in front of that is a 7. All right, example number 2. This is looking at this stuff at the bottom. So write an expression for each of the following. The sum of 3 and k. So remember, the sum means plus. So the sum of 3 and k is going to be 3 plus k. The product of m and 7. The product, we are looking at timesing. So we are going to go m times 7. Okay. In maths, remember, if we've got a time sign, we can combine them together. So it'll be m7. But what we like to do, and something you may have noticed already, is we write the number in front of the letter. So that would be the same as 7m. Okay. m7 and 7m are the same, because remember in math, if you're timesing two numbers together, it doesn't matter which goes first and second. 2 times 3 is the same as 3 times 2. So order does not matter for this. Okay, only for product though. 5 is added to 1/2 of k. Okay, so we want to first figure out the first part. 5 is added to something. So I'm going to go 5 is added to something. 5 is plussed to something. To 1/2 of k. Okay, so what I can do is I can go half of, remember in maths means times, so I can go times k, and if there's an invisible times, it'll be half of k. Another way that you might see this written, and I'm going to do an equal sign, because another way to represent this is to go 5 plus k on 2, okay, because there's a 1 on the top. If we were to pretend that this is a fraction, k over 1, when we times our top two values, we get 1 times k, which is k, over 1 would be 2 times 1, which is 2. So I can simplify that. All right, the next one, the sum of a and b is doubled. So the sum of a and b, the sum is plus, a and b is doubled. If I put a 2 in front of here, because doubling is 2, that 2 is just affecting the a, but we want it to affect the whole thing. So if we want it to affect the whole thing, we put this in brackets, okay? So 2 times, remember there's an invisible times here, the sum of a and b. Now the language of algebra can get a little bit confusing, but it's really important that we understand our key vocab words. So we're going to be practicing that.